Welcome back to the Roughed Up Podcast.
G'day guys, welcome back to another Roughed Up episode, and today we're here with Eric Summons. Known for being Boris the Black Knight.
Hey guys, before we get into the episode, I just want to ask you guys if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're new around here. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you could hit that subscribe button, it would mean heaps to us. Thank you. Enjoy the episode.
And you were just an absolute entertainer. You've done everything. The more we read into you, the more you just have done everything.
When I first became an entertainer, somebody said to me, actually my mentor, a very, very funny American Irishman called Billy McComb, he said, if they ask you, can you do it, say yes.
Yeah.
Just say yes. Yeah. And then go home and figure out how you're going to do that.
Yeah. How's your week been anyway, mate? Well,
Great, really good. Yeah, really good. I play squash about 4 or 5 times a week, and I love the squash.
Oh, squash is fun. I remember the old squash courts up where we lived, the Redcliffe one.
Yeah, I played there, yeah.
Yeah, they were good fun. I haven't played squash in ages.
Yeah,
though.
we should get
into it.
I get into trouble playing squash because I really have too much fun.
Yeah.
You know, if the ball falls on the floor, I pick it up, I make it disappear and they go with it. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
So the first question that probably we ask most of our guests is, how would you describe who you are to people that have no idea? I
describe myself as a short, fat Welsh wizard. That's all right. The best way to put it is this. If I had, this sounds terribly melodramatic, but it's not meant to. If I had independent means, I would do what I do for nothing.
Yeah.
Luckily, somebody wants to give me I'm one of those lucky people that I love what I do for a living. Absolutely adore it. I remember my wife came to pick me up from Channel 7 one day, and there was another chap there who was the technical manager. And she came into me, she said, how was it? And I was beaming. I said, we've had a ball. And the other chap, the technical manager's wife, said to him, how was your day? And he said, oh, bloody awful. So that's the difference. I really enjoy doing what I do.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're just living the dream, like you said, doing what you want to do and getting paid for it, which
not very well, but enough to keep the wolf from the door.
That's it.
Okay, so we'll start from your childhood, and then we'll go down into what
time's the game start?
Yeah, well, we've got the AFL.
Yeah, AFL Grand Final on tonight. Go Lions. Yeah.
Well, forgive me, as Eric, go Brisbane, the Lions, but as Boris, go Collingwood.
Wow.
Man.
Black and white.
Who would you prefer to win? You have to.
I've got to stay with Collingwood. I mentioned you before. When I was at Channel 7 got the football. And my boss called me in and he said, we want all the programmes to promote Aussie rules on Channel 7. He said, go and find somebody to support. So I didn't know much about Aussie rules then. I do now. But I looked at it and I saw Collingwood were black and white.
You're saying we should message Brisbane Lions.
The only problem is with Collingwood this year, in the last 5 minutes in 90% of the games, they were losing.
Yeah.
And they come back and they win by 1 point and 2 points.
Yeah.
You think, oh.
Watch them win the grand final by 1 point.
Be a good game.
It would.
But yeah, we'll get into it.
Because you grew up in Wales.
Wales, a place called Milford Haven, or in Welsh, Aberdaugleddau.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Wales. Two wonderful parents, wonderful parents. And sport was my life back then. But I went in infant school, preschool here.
Yeah.
We had a magician came to a Christmas show for us, and he was one of the old-fashioned magicians, white tie, top hat, tails, and he produced a bunny rabbit from a hat. Psh, I was sold. Right? I was sold. In fact, hold that for a second, please. What he did was, very quickly, if I can find something here, what he did was he took a ball, which he made disappear, and I thought, I need to do that. And I figured it out, and I just became a magician after that. And that's all. But my parents were really kind. They took me to London to a big store called Gamage's, and it has a magic department. They waited 2 hours while I picked one magic trick. They were very kind to me. But yeah, I just love them. I teach kids magic now.
Yeah,
which is good.
With your magic, like, I know, like, when I was younger, I was in, like, I think every kid goes through the magic phase.
Yes, yeah.
And then, like, some die off and some continue it. Yeah. But some of the magic tricks take forever to learn. What's the, like, longest amount of time that you've put into one trick to learn?
I'm now 147 years old, and I practice every single day.
Yeah.
And some things that I've been doing for a long, long time, I still practice.
Yeah.
It's important, you know, it's important to me. And because in another way, what I do for a living is also my hobby.
Yeah.
But one thing I do like about it that a lot of magicians don't do is I love the history of it.
Yeah.
I study the history. I do a lecture on the history of magic and Houdini, and, you know, I do a lecture on the history of... Okay, here's a piece of useless information for you. Who was the first person ever to fly an aeroplane in Australia?
In Australia.
No.
Isn't the person on a note?
No.
Okay.
Harry Houdini.
Really?
Houdini came out here to do a show, and he'd just been in Europe. And he flew an aeroplane in Europe, in France, called the Voisin. V-O-I, Voisin aeroplane. He bought it. And he had it shipped to Australia, and he went to a place just outside Melbourne called Digger's Rest.
Yeah.
And he flew it for about 10 minutes. That's all, just 10 minutes. He was a clever man, he then shipped it to Sydney, where he charged people for a trip in his aeroplane. He made a lot of money out of it. Yeah, so Harry Houdini, he won an award. The people at Ballarat had put up a trophy for the first person ever to fly in Australia, and he did it.
That's awesome.
Houdini did so much, like even like that, didn't even know, but like you hear random facts about Houdini, and just
fascinating man.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't actually born in the States, even though his mum claimed that he was an American. He was born in Hungary. And they escaped Hungary and got to America, and she figured if she changed his birth date by a couple of weeks, they could claim he was American. So that's what happened.
Wow. Yeah, okay. But yeah, so
well, we've got you.
In case you're wondering why they're looking up there, they've got a list of questions.
See, we aren't TV legends like you. We can't just like...
No, not a legend. My wife, bless her heart, bought me a badge once that says almost famous. Almost famous.
Yeah. But we got to learn, that's one thing, we got to learn how to
keep the conversation going without, because I imagine you probably are all right.
I was told many years ago that the secret to an interview was you can have your clipboard with one question on, and what you do is from the answer you get, you pick up on the next question.
Yeah.
Rather than, it's awful when you watch television and you see somebody that isn't good at interviewing and they ask the first question, they don't listen to the answer. They're reading what the next question is.
All right, well, you're born in Wales.
Yep.
What did you used to watch as a kid? Like what?
As a kid on TV? Obviously old black and white stuff then, but there were things like Bill and Ben, the Flower Pot Men, and oh gosh, I can't remember them all now. But they were all just wonderful little cartoons. You know, lovely cartoons. And I used to sit with my mum and dad and watch. You must have heard of Lucy Ball. No. You guys haven't lived. Google Lucille Ball and have a look at it. Very, very funny stuff.
Okay.
Really funny stuff.
So what was that about? Like just
Lucy Ball. It was a little family, show. But they will always get into funny situations. Very talented lady. Very, very talented.
Did you take inspiration going from that?
Not really. As a kid, my favourite performers were the Goons. Now, you've probably never heard of them either. Spike Milligan, Harry Seacombe, Peter Sellers. You boys haven't lived.
We're young.
So if I tell you that I've made a movie with Spike Milligan, it would mean nothing.
No, it would nothing.
Absolutely nothing. The Goons were crazy people. There were 3 guys that met during the war and just did silly things.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Playing two characters were Blue Bottle and somebody else, and they'd be in a crow's nest on a ship. And when one was standing one side, one the other side with a telescope, he said, "I can see you from here." "Oh, look at that." He said, "What? Let me have a look." And he'd come round and he'd go, "No, I've gone now." Silly stuff.
Yeah, okay.
And that's very much the way Boris was. It was silly stuff.
That's it.
Just ad lib.
So in school, or in your childhood, were you like the comedian that you are today? Like, I'd say you're a comedian.
Yeah, but we all were.
Yeah.
Everybody was a class clown back in those days.
Yeah.
But wonderful school. I went to a place called the Milford Haven Grammar School. I'm still friends with some of my teachers. And in fact, my geography teacher was a lovely man called Di Watts. And I went home in February, and I went to see Di, and he was black and blue. Still at the age of about 92, he rides a push bike.
Oh, wow.
And his scarf, because it's quite cold where I come from, his scarf caught in the wheel and he fell over and he cut himself to shreds. But when he looked up, he was outside one of the local pubs. So before anything, he pushed the bicycle about 50 yards down the road so that people didn't think he'd fallen over coming out of the pub. But I had lovely teachers, fabulous teachers. And we all got on really well together. And sport was very big back then for us. On a Saturday, I'd play soccer for the school in the morning. I'd play soccer for the town in the afternoon. The next day, I'd play rugby union in the morning for the school, rugby union in the afternoon. It was sport everywhere.
And was that your parents wanting you to play sport, or was that just...
No, my dad wasn't sporting. My dad worked his backside off 7 days a week. I'll tell you one quick aside about my dad that was special. My dad wasn't really prone to showing his emotions. But every single day of his life, and he worked every day of his life, he would go to the shop and he'd buy a bar of dairy milk chocolate for my mum. And every night he came home, he'd give my mum a bar of chocolate. And I've always said that's special. And the one time I saw his emotions, I was in a final Welsh trial to play soccer for Wales. And my dad said, "Good luck, boy, off you go." And I went and I came home, and he was at my uncle's farm helping at the farm. And he was standing on a hedge actually cutting some trees down. And he said, "How do you go, boy?" And I said, "Oh, all right, Dad." He said, "Doesn't matter," he said, "as long as you did your best." And he came down off the hedge. And I said, "Oh, by the way, what you doing on such and such a date?" "Oh," he said, "I don't know why." And I said, "Oh, I've got a front row seat for you to watch me play for Wales against Scotland."
Oh, nice.
And that's the first, probably one of the only times I saw emotion from my dad. And he really was, he was a very proud Welshman. And the fact that his boy had got to play for Wales, he was very proud of that.
Was soccer big back then in Wales? Was it?
Yes, in Wales, rugby union's the biggest. But soccer, very much so. In my school, we played soccer and rugby union. The only thing we didn't play in Wales was rugby league. I got fond of that out here, of course. But the sport was really big, and for most of us, I was talking to a young lass yesterday called Charmaine Moore. She was in Holland. We were in school together, but when I was in the soccer team, she was in the hockey team. We were in the athletics teams together, so everybody did sport back then.
Well, you wrote most of the sports questions.
Oh, yeah, well, you've met Pele.
Oh, yes, that was lucky, we had in Australia, we had the World Youth Cup. The same as the World Cup for soccer, but I think it was under 21s or something. And I got a phone call. I'd been doing some promotions for what then they were called the Brisbane Strikers. Now it's Brisbane Raw, isn't it? And I got a phone call to say, "Will you come and look after Pele?" And he was a lovely man. He gave me a soccer ball which he signed, which was rather special.
That's so good. How was would you say that you played professionally, or was
I did play professionally? professionally, yeah. I played for Hull City in the second division, and I played for Wales.
Was the pay good, or was it just like back then? It was just you went and you played.
The best way to put it is to say absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Yeah. No, it's not like the people this. No, we didn't get very much at all. But we played because we loved it. Yeah. You know, just loved it. And I'm soccer mad. I mean, I'm a Gunners fan. I'll tell you a story about. Oh, sorry, you don't know who they are, do you? No, of course
he's more soccer than I am.
That's Arsenal.
Yeah.
All right, Arsenal are the Gunners. They were my heroes. In fact, I was a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And my hero was a man called Jack Kelsey.
Yeah.
Jack Kelsey played for Arsenal in the 60s, and he played for Wales. Yeah. He was way before his time. He used to. You would never have heard of Super 8 movies either, would you? No, of course you wouldn't have. Small little cameras, and you could film moving pictures.
Wow.
All right. So what he would do was, when he played for Arsenal and for Wales, he would get a friend with a camera to stand directly behind the goal, and they would film the 18-yard box, it was called then.
Yeah.
You know, and so what they would do, they would basically watch what he would do for the hour and a half of the game.
Yeah.
He would then go home and watch it to see if his positional play was correct or anything else. He was my absolute superhero. Many years ago, I went to London, and Arsenal were playing in the semi-final of the FA Cup, and I thought, I'll go and see it. So I went up to Highbury, their ground then, and I tried to buy a ticket. Nothing. Totally sold out, of course, you know. Yeah. The ticket touts were selling them outside for ridiculous amounts of money. If it was £20 to go in, they were selling them for £200. You know? Yeah. So I obviously I couldn't afford a ticket, so I thought, well, while I'm here, I'll go in the shop and I'll buy a few souvenirs. So we bought a few souvenirs, and the fella behind the counter said to me, he said, "You've got a funny accent." I said, "I'm a Welshman living in Australia." He said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, Arsenal is God's favourite soccer team. You know, apart from that, the best goalkeeper to walk on God's earth played for Arsenal." He said, "Who was that?" I said, "Jack Kelsey." I'm feeling goosey. The door opened and this fella stuck his head out. He said, "I'm listening to you." It was Jack Kelsey.
Oh, wow.
My hero was standing there.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hello." He said, "I'm Jack." I said, "My name's Eric Summons." He said, "I know that name. Come with me." And he took me into his office. He ran the shop, the souvenir shop. Took me in the office, and he got out the News of the World Book of Soccer, which had listed everybody that ever played for their country. And there I was in tiny writing in there. So he said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" I'm having a cup of tea with my hero, right?
Yeah,
which was wonderful. And then he said, "Are you coming to the game?" I said, "No." I said, "Couldn't get a ticket." "Don't be daft, boy." He said, "I'm a director. Sit with me." If you came to my home now, you'd see sitting on top of the computer, there's a picture of Jack and I together.
Nice.
And it was really, so I went to the game with him, and I took all these photographs of Jack and I together, and it was lovely. And it's really sad. 1 week later, he passed away.
Really?
So good luck next week, boys.
Yeah, wow.
You've just met me 2 weeks. Took him 7 days. But so I met my hero. How many people can say that?
Yeah,
you know?
And watch the game.
And watch the game with him, sat with him. In fact, one of the teams I played for back in Wales was called the Nayland Nomads.
Yeah.
Nayland Nomads. A lot of my school friends put this game together, asked me to go play with them. And I got a phone call, 12 months ago. One of the committee members was putting out a book on the history. And that story is in the book. Plus, I've got a photograph. There's a photograph of Jack and I together and me playing for Wales. Yeah, so special.
In your soccer days, what position did you play on the field?
Yeah, goalkeeper.
He doesn't listen, does he?
Yeah, no.
I said 20 minutes ago, goalkeeper.
I'm sorry. Well, this is why it's called roughed up.
He doesn't know soccer. He has no
I
idea.
know soccer. I'm horrible with soccer.
Yeah.
What's your sport?
I like NFL, like American sport.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a real life game?
No, I haven't.
I was lucky. We were flying through somewhere over there, and we went to a game. What you see on telly They cut a lot out.
Yeah, it goes for a long
Because in between the plays, there's a lot of lag time, you know. But it's lovely. It's great sport.
I just like the strategy that goes into it. It's like,
but of course, we've had a lot of Aussies that have gone to play there as kickers.
That's it.
The Aussie rules boys can kick the ball a mile, you know.
We've had a couple of NRL stars go there that didn't turn out so well. But anyway. We'll move on to you. Moving to Australia from Wales, what age did you...
I tell everybody everything in my life, and my age is 147.
147.
I really can't remember when. But I wasn't coming to Australia per se. I was a cruise director with Chandris Lines.
Oh, wow.
So I was going around the world as a cruise director. Yeah. And I met Norman Yem. Now, you wouldn't know who Norman Yem is. Norman Yem used to be a detective on a television show here. He was also a baritone, wonderful, wonderful voice. And he asked me if I'd tour with him through New South Wales, through places like Parks and Orange and all that sort of area. And I got off the boat to do it. In fact, when I got off the boat that day, there was a very famous Australian magician whose name I won't mention because you'll have no idea who he is. But he came to meet me, which was special. But I stayed for that, and then I did some shows in Sydney, came up to Coffs Harbour, Nambucca Heads. They opened a sort of a tourist park there called Valor Park, which was wonderful. And then I came on to Brisbane and fell in love with Brisbane. And the TV thing was an accident too. I mean, I was wandering around shopping centres dressed as a clown called Lollipop the Clown. And back in those days, you won't remember these either. We didn't have mobile phones. We had pagers. And if somebody wanted you, they'd dial your number and it would beep and there'd be a message. So I got one of those in the middle of doing a show at Kenmore. And that's not me. I turned my phone off.
That's Eli.
That's your phone, Eli. So it went off and it said, get up to Channel 7. So I still dressed as a clown with big red shoes and a red nose and everything else. I went to Channel 7 and I was interviewed by Bobby Lim. You wouldn't know him either. He was a very famous Australian on television. And Bobby came up here to start a show which was live at the time called Top of the Bill. And Top of the Bill was a variety show. There was a host and a hostess. There would be singers. And they wanted somebody to play all the comedy roles, which is what I was asked to do. But it was live. It was wonderful. You know, I'd be doing a sketch as a silly postman, and then I'd have to run out and quickly change into a cowboy and come back as a cowboy and do the next sketch. It was live. It was wonderful.
Did it ever lead to any funny situations? Have you?
Lots of funny situations. Lots of them. Jackie Mack was on the programme. I loved Jackie. Jackie was very special. She was there. Graham Cherry was the host, who sadly left us a while back. But then they decided that they would pre-record it by an hour. So if the show went to air at 8, we started filming at 7. And from that moment on, everything went wrong. Right? If somebody went, oh, sorry, can we do that again? So even though it was going to air at 8 o'clock, we might still be filming at 8:30, you know. And that was the executive producer. You'll know the name, although you won't know perhaps you won't. You'll know his wife's name. Have you ever heard of Anne Geddes?
I've heard of that.
You're a photographer. You should know this. Anne Geddes is famous for all the baby photographs she took. Well, Anne was my boss's secretary. His name was Kel Geddes. They went to New Zealand, they ran TV there, they went to America, they live in New York now. And Anne became this magnificent kids photographer, but Kel was the producer. And when we'd done about 17 weeks, and Kel called me into the office, he was known as the program manager, and he said, look, don't tell anybody, but we're going to finish the show tomorrow. It finishes. But we'd like to keep you on to do something. Go away and come up with an idea. So I went home and I sat down, and they had a kids show called the Super Flying Fun Show, which was hosted by a lovely girl called Julianne Everly, who now teaches drama in Melbourne. And Julianne said, Oh, sorry. And so Kels had come up with something, and I thought, okay, I can play different characters. I was used to changing quickly, you know. Yeah. So I played 2 characters. I played... The goody was Merlin the magician, and he said, "Oh, fella, whatever." He was like that. And I thought, I want something the opposite. Yeah. I want a baddie. Yeah. And I thought, okay, baddies, and they dress in black. So I came up with that costume that my wife made. And then I put some black makeup on the face, and I thought they'd speak like that, you know, that'll be horrible. And that's how it all started. Yeah, wow. So I came back and I said, "How about this?" He said, "Great." And as luck would have it, Boris clicked because he was a baddie. Yeah. You know, he was a baddie. Kids would write in and on air. I mean, it was all live back then. You know, they'd say, "What do I do?" And I'd say things, oh, well, I wouldn't. Boris would say things like, "If you're going to school tomorrow and you want to wear your black shoes, and your mother says wear your brown ones, wear your black ones. What does she know anyway? She's only your mother." So I got into trouble all the time.
But my dad tells me the story about watching Boris, and at the start of the show, he was like, "Get off the couch!" Yeah. and then the dad's mum would tell the kids, "Oh, see, he knows that you're on the couch."
We used to have a lot of fun. And as Boris, we got away with stuff. But it wasn't me, all right? Yeah. Forgive me, your dad saw me. Yeah. There was a team of people making all of that funny. Yeah. A team of them. The cameramen were brilliant. Yeah. I still see a lot of them now. The cameramen, the sound technicians, the lighting technicians, the director. I had a production assistant. They were all fabulous people. Yeah. And without them, none of this would have happened, you know. And they did things like, with one of the castles that we built, the bricks, big bricks, were made out of polystyrene. I mean, when I first started, everything was timber. You know, it weighed a ton, the set, but by the end of it, they cut bricks out of polystyrene, stick them on a bit of hardboard and paint them. So I'd be sitting there and I'd have a cup of coffee here and I'd be chatting to the kids, and then I'd reach out for my coffee and it'd be gone. And nobody'd come near the castle set anywhere. And what they did was, when I didn't know, they'd come in early, they'd built a sort of a back way behind the castle, they'd cut a hole in the wall where one of the bricks was, and they put it on hinges. So I didn't know this, but they could be out the back and they'd swing open the door and they'd reach through and take my coffee. And all this silly, and they used to blow me up. You ask your dad, he'll tell you, they used to blow. One of the, it's too late now, one of the crew discovered you could make bombs by putting okay. By putting gunpowder into gaffer tape and putting a detonator in and then touching it to a battery, boom, off she'd go. But they would do it to me all the time. At one time they put an old violin on the set. And I didn't know why it was there. I said, "Oh, look, a violin." I picked it up to play it. There was a bomb in it, which I didn't know about. Boom, and the fellow that became the production manager, KC, funny guy, he built a cannon, which was a big cardboard tube, which he blocked the end of, and he put a whole pile of rags in it, and then a bomb behind it. So by igniting the bomb, the rags came shooting out at me. But of course, the bomb sets things on fire. So and back in those early days, my suit was made of nylon. So it melted into me. I was in so much pain. But we had a ball. We had an absolute ball.
It just sounds like a lot of older kids.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we did. And we did a lot of things that... A lot of double meaning stuff that people didn't get. You know, we'd put birthdays. If the kids wanted their birthday read out on air, they'd go across the screen and Boris would read them out. But sometimes the crew would put names on that really shouldn't be read out on children's television. And I'd just do it. We did one. I actually swore on air once. Can I talk about this? I swore on air once. My boss called me in the next morning. And he said, I hear that a lady phoned up and complained that Boris said a naughty word. And what had happened was we had 3 cameras. And there was a fella, Jack was on this particular camera. And just because we ad-lib stuff all the time, I would run and jump on the camera, right? And then what the cameraman had to do was keep zoomed in so you only saw the castle.
Yeah.
You know, if he zoomed out or turned sideways, it ruined the illusion. So I jumped on, and then he would go back and back and back, zooming in all the time so the castle would be in the distance. Well, this particular day, Jack, bless his heart, the camera moved off the set. So the director, a guy called Brett Mulcahy, shouted down. He said, "Sorry, Boris, we'll have to do it again." So I jumped off the camera to walk back to the set, and I called Jack a rude name. A really rude name. And the next morning, the boss called me in. And what, you see, the reason it went to air was this. Normally, when you do a TV show, there's a countdown.
Yeah.
10 to 1, beep, and you're on. So there'd been a countdown. Then we'd done this. And they said, okay, we'll have to start again. They didn't go back to the start of the countdown. They did another countdown. So when the shows go to air in a room called traffic, it went beep, 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 boom, and we're on. That's what went to air, that little bit. But it was fine, we got away with it. I only ever got called it once before, which we spoke about before. I burnt the studio down. We'd been recording the program, and I had lots of different puppets. Aggro started on Boris's Breakfast Club. There were 4 Aggros. 4 of them. The very first one was a guy called Gary Rhodes. His nickname is Nine. They call him Nine because for a short period he went to work for Channel 9 and came back. But Gary lives in Tasmania. He's a very intelligent, absolutely magnificent bloke. And he dreamt up, he's a movie producer now. He dreamt up Aggro. One of the people in presentation that puts the stuff to air, he'd bought an animal puppet. And he'd taken it home, and he'd taken some of the fur off the original animal and stuck other fur on to make him look a little bit different. I don't know if you know or not, but there was a kids show on air in England, which was like in somebody's playroom or something, and on the wall behind them there was a picture of Kermit the Frog. Jim Henson, that started the Muppets, saw this and thought, hang on, they haven't asked permission for that. And it cost them £1 million.
Wow.
Almost $2 million it cost them, because they didn't ask. So they decided they should make this puppet look a little bit different. And we'd had other puppets before that. You know, we'd had lots and lots of different puppets. And Gary played all the characters. And he came up with playing Aggro. And it was his idea that he would eat gravel and all that sort of stuff. And then there were 2 others before Jamie. But what had happened was, I think it was about the second Aggro, was Brett Davidson was under the table. There was a hole in the table, the trapdoor had come up. He was down there. He hated bombs, and because he hated them, the crew would put more and more and more bombs. You know, they were just those sort of guys. So they put bombs underneath, and they'd blow him up. He'd be down. I'd say, "Hello, Aggro, how are you?" "I'm all right." Boom! He'd get really angry.
I can imagine not swearing with Bongo.
So they'd let these bombs off. So we broke for lunch. Towards Christmas time, we would pre-record lots of shows. We broke for lunch, went down to the canteen, and while we were down there, the fire alarms went off. And we ignored them because Channel 7, there were always fire alarms going off. We came back up, and the studio was flooded. The fire brigade had been. What had happened was he used to lie on thick sponge rubber, and of course the bomb going off, it had smouldered and eventually caught fire, and there was nobody else in the studio, so the castle burnt down. From the photograph I showed you before, the castle burnt down, all the leads melted, the cameras were destroyed, the lighting rack was shot. Behind what you're using here, this green screen. Have you been in the TV studio?
I've never been in one.
In a TV studio, they have what's called a cyclorama, and the green screen will come down and it'll come out onto the floor. So you can shoot into it with your camera, and it looks like infinity. You know, there's no joints or anything. That was gone. That had just burnt down. So the next, we were really worried. I went home. The next morning, my boss, a man called Darryl Black, who sadly left us now, I got called up to his office. Wherever I went, even if I was Eric, he would call me Boris.
Yeah.
Right. So the next morning, I got to his office and I tapped on the door, and he opened the door, and he said, "Hello, Eric." And I thought, there's trouble. There's trouble. He's called me by my real name. He said, "Come in and sit down." So I did. He said, "Would you like a drink?" And this is early in the morning, and I thought, this is like the mafia, right? He's going to give me a drink, he's going to give me something to eat, and then he's going to take a baseball bat, boom. But he sat down and he said, "I just wanted to say thank you." And I thought, yeah, thank you and goodbye. But no, he was serious.
Yeah.
He said, "Thank you." It caused about $2 million worth of damage. They were just about to refurbish the studio.
Oh, insurance. Yeah.
I paid for it with insurance.
Yeah, nice.
No, I was a hero. I actually got a plaque, which I still have, saying thank you. Because we burnt the studio down, they claimed it all in insurance.
Lovely.
This won't be played for an insurance company. Yeah, and so that was it. We got away with it, which was great.
How did you know, when Boris actually was doing really well? When was the moment that you went, this is actually working?
It fired right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right from the very beginning, it just fired because he was naughty.
Yeah.
He wasn't bad, he was just naughty.
Yeah.
And the kids just sort of... There's a lovely school just the other side of Kenmore called the Brisbane Independence School. Yeah. They liked it that much that they weren't allowed... I'll digress and tell you a story. When I was doing Boris and producing the show, I got a parcel sent to me from America. A man in America realized how damaging television could be to young minds.
Yeah.
So he actually passed away, but before he did, he employed some people to research the subject and write a book about the harm that television could do to children. And one of the things that he said was, in the morning before they go to school, don't let them watch television.
Yeah.
I've never forgotten the name of the book.
Yeah.
Brilliant title. The book was called The Plug-in Drug.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that clever? The Plug-in Drug. I've still got the copy that I was sent. So the Brisbane Independent School wouldn't let the children, they live in it. School, wouldn't let them watch it in the morning, but the teachers would record it. They'd record 2 hours in the morning, and after school the kids could watch Boris then.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And the kids that came out, we used to use on Wombat, which I came up with as well. We'd get the kids from the school in to be on committees in Wombat. I designed Wombat because we had a program manager at the time called, have you heard of Wombat, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Here's a first. We had a program manager at the time called Mike Latin, who ended up going to Channel 10 in Melbourne. But Mike worked for us, and he called one Christmas Day. And he said, "I want you at work tomorrow." And I said, "It's Christmas." He said, "I need you tomorrow." And I went up the next day, and I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Australia are going to bring in something brand new in television called C classification programs, C for children."
Yeah.
And they had to be entertaining but also educational.
Okay.
He said, "Sit," and he sent me to his secretary's desk. He said, "Sit down and come up with a show." And I remember when I was a kid in England, we used to watch things like, they were called Blue Peter and Magpie. Magpie was a magazine program, and it was called Magpie because magpie birds collect bits and pieces from other nests to build their own.
Yeah.
Right? So he said, "Come up with a program." I thought, okay, a magazine program. And the whole idea was to take kids to places and to meet people that they normally wouldn't get a chance to meet. Like if we were meeting somebody really important, we would get the kids to come in and interview them rather than us, so that they can ask questions that they wanted to ask. And then I had to come up with a name for it. And I thought, what on earth do I call a magazine program for kids? And I sat down and I wrote down all the animals and birds I could think of. And this was Boxing Day, so I sat there going, "Hiya kids, welcome to Magpie." No, there's no magpies. "Hiya kids, welcome to Kookaburra." No, that doesn't sound right. And I went through all the Aussie animals, and I got to Wombat. And I said, "Hi kids, welcome to Wombat. What's a wombat?" I thought, "Oh, that's what I want." It's a questioning thing. What's a wombat? So that's why we call it Wombat.
I like the little animation at the start.
At the start, that was a Brisbane guy, I think. We got another producer in after a while, a lovely lady called Dina Heslop, and Dina found that guy to make that cartoon for us. But we had a lot of fun doing that too.
A lot of that, because none of it you can find online now, but a lot of that was filmed in Dreamworld, wasn't it? Or was it?
No. We filmed everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to the States and filmed in Hawaii and things like. Oh no, we filmed it everywhere.
Yeah.
We did do some stuff at Dreamworld, but we did it all over Australia. We had a team of very good cameramen and sound assistants, and we would go everywhere and do it. In fact, do you ever go to the movies?
Yeah.
Okay. If you ever watch Path News in the movies, it starts off with a little black and white thing with a kookaburra.
Yeah.
The man that filmed that kookaburra was a man called Eric Gala, a German cameraman who came to Australia, and he was our cameraman, one of our cameramen on Wombat. And he shot that when he first came to Australia in black and white. There's a useless piece of information for you.
Lovely. So with TV, like TV obviously has a lot of, like you said, like crew and then the entertainers.
Yeah.
What did you learn? Like you said, you were a producer off camera when you weren't on camera that you still use today.
From the guys, I learned so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got my own cameras and things now, and I've done a few things. One of the things I did about Freemasonry. 23 minutes of what I did was shown on the ABC. I filmed it, I edited it, but I could only do the editing because I used to watch the guys at Channel 7 editing.
Okay.
You know, if you're bright, you'll pick up what people are doing.
Yeah.
So it was a learning curve for everybody, you know, back then. But it was great. You can pick up so much. We had I tell you the difference in TV in Australia and the UK. In the UK, the cameramen were all, back then, middle-aged.
Yeah.
The cameramen here were all young fellas.
Yeah.
They're not even middle-aged yet, you know. So they were young, they were excited, they were creative. And that's why everything that we did at 7 was so special.
Yeah. And as well, with another question I had with like TV is, how long does it go from having an idea to getting it on air?
Oh,
Like
that depends how good you are at selling it.
Yeah.
With Wombat, it just happened because they said, come up with it. There are other people that will write scripts, come up. There was one guy asked me to be on a 6-part series. Fabulous idea. It was set around a small surf lifesaving club.
Okay.
But it wasn't a successful surf lifesaving club because a sewage pipe went through the middle of the beach.
I'm turning off your phone.
I don't know how to use an iPhone. I just got a new phone. I don't know how to turn it off.
So the sewage pipes went through the beach, so nobody used the beach. So there was a 6-part series. There were 6 main characters between the old president of the club, the secretary of the club, the club captain who was fit and healthy, you know.
Yeah.
And each person had a separate bit. Fabulous idea. I read the scripts. I was offered one of the parts, and I loved it. Never got off the ground.
Wow.
Never got off the ground. And especially because you have to remember that to make Wombat it costs a lot of money. You know, you've got 4 or 5 people on air, you've got crews, you've got studio time, you've got cars, everything. And when we originally started and things were on film, I would go out with Eric Gala, the cameraman, and we'd film stories. That film would have to be sent to Melbourne to be developed, and then sent back to be edited. So it cost a lot of money. But you could buy a program from America that you could put to air for $20. You know, when you paid $200 for a program from the States, you get to use it 10 times. So that's what ruined it all. There's very little production up here now. We had at one time 7 was
massive. Yeah.
Massive. It was so much. In fact, when we did if you Google Boris's Breakfast Club or Boris the Black Knight, you'll find stuff on there from our 50th anniversary. And when we did that, they asked me to go up and be filmed as Eric, and then change and be filmed as Boris. So I got there early. And Franca, a beautiful, beautiful lady that was on the front desk, Franca said, "You're early?" And I said, "Yeah, I thought I'd come and say hello to everyone." She said, "There's nobody here to say hello to."
Yeah.
And there wasn't. You know, we used to have a camera crew of 12, 14, 15 people. We were down to about 2 people.
Yeah, that's a bit sad, isn't it?
Yeah, really sad, because they just, a local production just cost so much money.
Yeah. It's a good thing but a bad thing, because now Ryan and I are doing it, but also back then you'd need a heap of people to make a show, but now 2 of us can upload a video on YouTube.
And you're using an SLR camera to film it on, you know, and back then the cameras were absolutely massive. But the reproduction on these, it's because of progress. Somebody, I read somewhere once that every 12 months we progress 10 years. You know, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. We're up to question 3 so far. There's only another 147.
Do you reckon like how TV is now is different to how TV is back then? Obviously it is.
Yes, it is. I did shows this week at Beanley Marketplace and at Deception Bay Marketplace. And it's really lovely because you get much older people come up and go, "G'day, Boris." But they all say to me, it's different now. Back then you could get away. When we did the 50th anniversary, I came in as Eric and did the interview as Eric, and then the chap off camera. Go back even further. When I was at 7, we had a makeup room downstairs. Bindi was our makeup artist. She was fabulous. Big makeup department. When I went up to film the 50th anniversary, the makeup was in a little toilet bag hanging on the back of the set. No makeup anymore, right? So the guy that was interviewing me, just like you, had no idea who I was. Absolutely no idea. So they interviewed Eric, and then he asked a question about Boris, and I said, "Well, you better ask him." And I did that, and then we cut, and I changed into Boris and came back. When we did the Eric bit, there was him and I in the studio, and a remote camera.
Yeah, wow.
When we did Boris, there were 30 or 40 people in the studio. And he went, "What's this all about?" And they explained to him that Boris had been reasonably popular. You know? So he said, "Wow," he said, "if it's that popular, maybe you should come in the outside promotions." So we went into the city because it was Channel 7's 50th birthday. What we did was they bought a big cake, but then they also got little, which they do now, of course, you get cupcakes to give away to everybody. So I was in there as Boris. And it was, honestly, this sounds silly, but it was so big, they gave me 2 bodyguards. Oh, wow. Right? Because there were people. The reason being, all the people working in the city during that period had been kids watching me on air. Right? So suddenly they're going, "Wow, what's this old farts doing here?" You know. So, but what I'm getting to is this: a lady pulled up at the traffic lights in an open Mercedes. And I'm dressed as Boris. I said, "I like your car. Wow." And I went round to the door and I said, "Move over." She moved over. I got in and drove off in this lady's car. And the PR guy from 7 that had asked me was going, "No, you can't do that anymore." But we did. We got away with stuff that you can't get away with now. And now it's the same. Sorry, if I go to my adult act, I do magic, right? I do magic. And I do comedy magic. And I do some gags and all that sort of stuff. When I first started, all I did was magic. Comedy magic, but I did magic. Gradually, humor came in. So 80% of my show ended up as comedy stuff and a bit of magic on the side. Now, you can't do that comedy anymore.
Well, it's the same with us. We say stuff on our podcast that we have to just cut out. We laugh at it like so much.
And then we show it to our girlfriends and they're like, "You can't say that."
I do a joke, which I won't do for you, but I do a joke in my adult act, which is a joke about somebody stammering. And it's clean and it's very funny. I got into trouble doing it for a particular council because the lady said, "Oh, if there's anybody in the audience that stammers, you're going to upset."
And the thing is, they don't suffer.
It's the same as, like in Sydney today, or last night or something, the Broncos fullback.
Yeah.
Fabulous player.
Yeah.
Some idiot kid said something to him.
He said something back.
He said something back. Now it's hit the fan, there's trouble. It's the sort of stuff that happens all the time.
Yeah.
If one person complains...
But as well, even when I was a kid, for example, that whole Reece Walsh thing that happened, if a player said something back, it would be seen as good. He said something back to now it's like...
Well, I Facebook is good and bad. I was reading some of the comments today on Facebook about Reece Walsh. Most of them are saying, for heaven's sake, it's what you'd expect somebody to say back, It's silly, but if you get one person to complain, then I thought, what then through my mind, of course, this is Penrith. Yeah. They're trying to get him not in the game because he'll help the Broncos win the game. Yeah. The Broncos are going to win anyway.
Yeah.
But with the offensive stuff with obviously Agro and Jamie, now that you see the clips on TV, you're like, how is this children's television?
A lot of those clips never went to air.
Oh, okay.
A lot of those clips never went to air. And Jamie sort of brought that in.
Yeah.
The original Agro, Gary Rhodes, it was family entertainment. But offcuts. We have a thing in television called Christmas tapes. Yeah. Now you just said you cut stuff out here. Keep it all. And you put it onto one tape that you show your friends at Christmas. So we would always have a Christmas tape where people would do silly things. But not all of that. We're talking about now, in fact, I came with this idea ages ago about doing a Boris on stage.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Because a lot of people say, when are you going to bring Boris back? You can't. It's all so different now. But on stage, what I wanted to do was build a sort of a semi-castle set. And I was going to have Boris enter on a walker. Covered in cobwebs, and then do maybe 45 minutes, an hour there was going to be a giant screen. And people that had worked on the program would tell some funny stories about what happened. We'd show some funny clips about what had happened. And the one thing that I used to do all the time on Boris's Breakfast Club, every week we would feature a local musical act that was totally unknown. We just wanted to give them on air a chance so that people could see who they were and maybe get some work out of it. So then we thought we'll do the hour of the Boris thing first of all, and then we'll do get a local act to perform on air. And while they were on, I would change into Eric and come back, and I do a thing called the magic of laughter, which is a motivational thing, which is whatever you do in life, whether it's for fun or for a job, you've got to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, what's the point in doing it? You're not going to do it very well anyway. May I tell you a quick story about from the middle of that? I started life in England as a clown. That was by luck as well. I was in a pub at Christmas having a drink, and everybody got up to do something. And I used to do impressions and a bit of magic, so I got up and did something. At the end of the night, this chap called Arthur Adolph came over and gave me his business card. And he said, give me a call Monday. So I called him Monday, and he said, come and see me on the Wednesday. I went to see him at a place called St. Albans, outside London. And he explained to me that he did a kids' act. And he had so much work, he wanted to create a second character, looking the same name, but he had so much work. And we discussed it. At that time, I was still a professional soccer player, and I was in London just for a break. And he said, oh, the phone rang. And he went out and he came back, and it was a lady looking for another clown for that Saturday. And he said, there's a job on the phone, do you want it or not? And I went, yeah, okay. So that was it. I turned professional there and then. And that's how I became the kids' clown. But there was one, I did everything. We would do a 3-hour show. Right? I would do magic, I'd do puppets, I'd do ventriloquism, I'd play games with the kids, we'd do the whole lot. So I got booked to do a show. Okay, you've heard of Damon Hill, the racing driver?
No,
Yeah.
I have not.
Oh, dearie.
Eli has.
Yeah, F1.
Damon Hill was the world champion racing driver. He's now one of the commentators on Formula One.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
His father before him, which I didn't mention because if you don't know Damon, you wouldn't know his dad. His father was called Graham Hill.
Yeah.
Graham had a serious accident in Formula One and
Yeah.
busted his legs and everything. I got booked to do a show next door to their house in North London.
Yeah.
Damon was there as one of the kids, a little kid then. So I got booked to do Damon's birthday party next door, which was great. So we did all that. But the first one I did, I arrived, I used to drive a red MGB. Have you heard of an MGB? No, of course you haven't. No, it's a little sports car. Yeah. I arrived in that, and I will always arrive in a blazer and a tie, and a nice pair of slacks, and then I'd go into the house with the magic act and with a case with my clown suit in, and I would change in the toilet. Yeah. Something to do with the quality of my act. Right, I would change in the toilet. So this guy, one day I pulled up outside this house, and it's probably a true story. Guy came running up, and I used to get £10 for 3 hours, $18, right? $18 for 3 hours. So he came out and he tapped on the window, and I opened it, and he put £10 in. I said, no, pay me after the show. No, he said, that's to stay. I said, oh, okay. So I got out the car, and I grabbed the case, and I grabbed the clown suit, and we're walking up the path towards the house, and there was a garage or a garage, depending on where you went to school, and there was banging on the door inside. And I said, what? He said, oh, no. He said, don't worry, that's Humphrey. You leave him in there. He'd locked a kid in the garage. Right? So we get to the house, and he took me to the bathroom where I changed, and I came out. I had my magic case. He said, are you ready? And I said, yes. He took me to the end of this corridor. There was a door with a key. He said, are you sure? And I said, yeah. He unlocked it, opened the door, pushed me in, closed the door, and locked it again. That was it. I was in there with nine-year-old little boys. Oh, no. The last thing in the world they wanted was a short, fat Welsh wizard dressed as a clown. Right? And I'm in there for 3 hours with them. So I started doing some magic. They weren't interested. No way in the world. And I thought, I've got to do something here. So I said, all right, who's ever heard of Harry Houdini? Who's that? They must have been friends of yours. They didn't know. Who's that? And I said, well, Harry Houdini was a special sort of magician. He was called an escapologist. What's that? And I said, well, you used to be able to lock him up and tie him up and he'd escape. No, he couldn't. I said, yes, he could. He could escape from anything. I said, I can too. They said, no, you can't. I said, I can. I said, you can tie me up and I can escape. Oh, no, you can't. Oh, yes, I can. Do you want to tie me up? Oh, yeah. So I got all my magic rope out, right? And I've given it to them, and they've tied me up. Now, if you're going to be tied up, all you do is you get a handful of rope. Yeah. Which you hold on to while they're tying you up. So when they've finished pulling it tight, you let go here, and you've got half a metre of rope that's free to wriggle out. So, of course, the next thing was, oh, it's easy. I said, I bet you can't do it. Oh, yes, we can. I said, all right, let me tie you up then. I tied the 9 of them up. There used to be a movie about prisoners of war, and the way they would tie them up, they'd kneel them down, they'd tie their ankles up, then up to their wrists, then up around the neck. Right? So if they leaned forward, they would strangle themselves. So I tied them all up, all 9 of them. And then magicians carry handkerchiefs. So I got all these silk handkerchiefs out, and I gagged them all. So I've got 9 boys, 9-year-old boys, tied up and gagged. I did my whole act. Did the whole act with them going, and if there was a thing where I said, look, here's a red handkerchief, and it's a blue one, they're supposed to say, no, it's blue, no, it's red. I do all that myself. Look, I've got a red hanky, it's blue, no, it's red, no. So I did the whole act. I swear to you, true story. When it finished, right, 3 hours, there's a tap on the door. It's the father. He said, are you ready to go? You're finished? And I said, yep. He said, all right, I'll let you out. And I said, well, just be prepared for a bit of a surprise. He opened the door and he saw these 9 kids, and I thought I was in trouble. He laughed his head off. He thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. He said, "Here, I'll give you your rope back." And I said, no, it's all right. You keep the rope. Let them loose when I've gone. And he paid me again. I got in my car, still dressed in the clown suit, and I was gone. So as far as I know, there are 9 55-year-old boys roaming around London still looking for me. But that's a true story, yeah. I loved all that. We used to have so much fun.
How many, like, those days, how many clients would you get?
Oh, every day.
Yeah.
Really?
Every day. You get £8 for a show in the week, and you get £10 at the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, but because there's always kids, there's always jobs, and the reason I still entertain kids now, I love entertaining kids because they say funny things.
Yeah.
I did a thing this week, as I said, at Beanley, and I do a thing with rope, where 3 pieces rope, small, medium, and large, get together at one length, and there was a little boy sitting in the front, and he's looking up at me, and when they became 3 pieces, they then become one long piece. And he looked and he just said, "Bugger me." And that just made me laugh. I just think, am I allowed to say bugger me? Yeah, but they say funny things.
Yeah.
So sadly, there's a lot of magical entertainers that they'll start life off doing kids shows, but then it's beneath them. No, I want to entertain grown-ups from now on.
Yeah.
The kids will always be there. There's always jobs to entertain kids, you know.
Well, Ryan and I were talking about it, that when we were growing up, it wasn't something that we got
birthday parties.
Birthday parties is the industry.
What did you do then?
We just
chilled
out.
Yeah.
But see, you didn't have these things in those days. I mean, you go into a shopping centre now and you see children in the trolleys, and they're playing games on the mum's phone or an iPad. And
I suppose that's what we kind of did. We used to have like the LAN parties and like we used to play games and stuff.
There's a thing goes around Facebook, and there's a list of about 20 things where somebody said, when I grew up, I drank out of a hose. I'd go out and came home when it was dark. And, you know, I did all that because in those days you could. It was safe enough to do. When I was in grammar school, 14 or something, being rugby union mad, my local rugby team would get a coach and they'd take everybody up to Cardiff, to watch Wales play Australia or something in rugby union. And kids could go then. It was safe enough for us to go. The big boys would keep an eye on us. We'd go to watch the game. We'd come back. We'd be the only sober ones on the bus because the other fellas have had a few drinks. And it was safe. But I was talking to my cousin Shirley when I was at home. They can't do that anymore. It's no longer a safe world. You know? Actually, the funniest quick thing, I went when I was at home to watch Wales play England. And it's Millennium Stadium, it's called now. And I actually took a photograph, which I've got there, of 2 policemen. When I was a kid, policemen carried a truncheon, a wooden stick, and that was it. And they were all friendly. When I went home, they were in body armour and they had machine guns and things, which are very sad. But there were 2 of them standing on the side of the road. And this chap came up with a big dog. And he's talking to the 2 policemen, asking them a question, and they're answering. While this is happening, the dog is having a poo on the ground directly in front of the policeman. And they said thank you, and he walked away, and the both of them looked down. They looked up and they both took one stride to the side and then just stayed there. The poo was over there. It was just funny. But yeah, it's all different. It was a much safer world back then. Now it's so difficult.
That's just I think it's just more publicised how bad the world is.
It's not a bad world. Forgive me, it isn't a bad world. There are some bad people.
Yeah, definitely.
Who seem to be able to get away with things now that they didn't get away with then. Basically, it's still a fabulous world. And this is a great country to live in. It's just wonderful. It's a very safe country. But for some reason, like there's a problem, as you know, people are complaining about youth crime here. I think it's because they seem to be able to get away with it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, they'll do something really bad,
Yeah.
they'll go to court, and the judge will slap their wrist and say, go and be a good boy, and they go and do it again.
Yeah,
you know?
next day, yeah. It's unfortunate, but...
We used to have a policeman in my village, a place called Lower Priory. There was a pub on the corner called the Mason's Arms, and they'd have a couple of just drinking age boys that would go in and have a few drinks, and they'd start a fight. Our local policeman was a policeman called P.C. Mortimer.
Yeah.
He used to ride around on a push bike, and he had bike clips on and a helmet, police helmet, right? He'd ride around. So they'd call him, and he'd come along. You couldn't do this these days. But he'd get to the pub, and there'd be these three boys that caused the fight. So he'd take his tunic off, he'd take his police helmet off, he'd take his bike clips off, and he'd go, come on, out to the car park. And he'd pound the three of them out the car. And they'd be good for the next 3 months. Yeah, they'd be good for the next 3 months. Yeah, you can't do that anymore. No. These days, if a policeman does this to a child, then he's before court and he's in. Yeah, yesterday, I don't know when this is going to go to air with your
Probably
podcast.
Like
Wednesday. Yesterday, of course, was the Police Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
And we've really got, they do a dreadful job. I mean, they've really got to be dedicated for what they do. I put a thing up on Facebook, you know, just saying I support all of our policemen now and all the ones that have died for us. You know.
That's what I said. Like when I was a kid, like I always said, "Oh, I want to be a policeman," and I look at it now, I'd be like, "That is the worst job I could think of."
Yeah,
that's all I wanted to do as a kid. Yeah. All I wanted to do. My name is Summons. Yeah. My home address as a kid was Courthouse, Lower Priory. Yeah. And I wanted to be a policeman. I wanted to be a dog handler, more than anything in the world. But entertainment sort of crept in. You know. Yeah, but it's a very difficult job.
Yeah, it's just the amount of abuse they cop now is a lot.
I don't know about that. It's even the people that you work with, they kind of, it's like save your own skin before you help someone else. Yeah.
And some of them die. You know, some of them, they'll go into a situation that doesn't look that bad. Some idiot will kill them, you know.
Yeah,
it's very sad.
Yeah. Well, I've got 2 more questions for you.
We've only up to 4 on that.
We've given up on that. Okay. But I was going to ask you about your show bag.
The show bag
Stuff.
May I? Can I lift it down? Yeah. We all, Channel 7 had a stand at the showground. Yeah. And we would all have different things. And actually, somebody sent me in one of the show bags, we put a big transfer, iron-on transfer, which was Boris's Breakfast Club. Somebody sent me one the other day, and we had badges. Somebody sent me a badge. There's a man on the Gold Coast. In one of the bags, we put in a mug and a bowl.
Yeah.
With Boris and O'Toole was the little monkey, and Nigel was the dragon. Yeah. They were on the mug and the bowl, and a television station actually went to a second-hand shop, and they were $76 or something. Wow. I went through all my cupboards looking for them. I've got a Boris's Breakfast Club Facebook page. Yeah. And there's a guy on the Gold Coast who's a member, a lovely, lovely man. He comes up with his wife and kids every Christmas to say hello. He's got a collection of 70 odd of these things.
Yeah, wow.
But it's because back then TV shows, kids watched them. Yeah. And they had not heroes, but they had favourites. You know, there were aggro bowls and everything else.
And that's my actual dad's from the show. He got that. And
your dad watched it.
Oh, my dad!
I knew somebody was watching.
Yeah.
There was a lovely this week, as I say at Beanley, a lovely old lady. Bless her heart. She must have been 95. She came up, shuffling up, and she looked up. She called, bloody hell, she said, Boris. And she said, I watched you when I was a kid. I thank you very much. That makes me 147. But she said something funny that made me laugh. Can I stand up?
Yeah.
She's like this. She's hunched over. And she said, do you know what I like about being old? And I said, what? She said, you find so much change Is that a lovely line?
Yeah. But what was my other question? Oh, my other question was meeting the Queen. The story.
I was very lucky because I worked in television. I met famous people. You know, this wasn't because I was special in any way. I happened to be in a situation. Back then, when I was a kid, my heroes were the Seekers. You've never heard of the Seekers. It was an Australian band of 3 guys and a girl.
Yeah.
Judith Durham, fabulous, fabulous voice. I worked with them here in Brisbane in a big show, but they were my heroes. I met them, and I you know, before I worked with them, and I interviewed them. Your grandparents would have heard of somebody called Douglas Fairbanks Jr., a very famous old movie actor.
Yeah.
Google it. Google it. I have an American friend called Woody, and I used to ask him. He was a mine of information, would answer. Whenever I got to a stage, when Google started, I'd say, what about it? He'd say, Google it. Google it. So I was lucky enough to meet all these famous people. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. I met and had a drink with and chatted to. I met the Queen because I love the Scouts. Right? I'm a senior Scout. They're now called Venturers. That's Scouts from 14 to 18. I'm a venture leader. So I love the Scouting world. It's just magnificent. And we were at a camp at a place called the Gower Peninsula in Wales. And there was an accident, and a young fella dived in the river and cut his head open and broke his shoulder blade and all that. And I happened to be there, so I got him out and whatever. Yeah. So they were kind enough to give me a little thing hanging on a ribbon.
Yeah.
And I went to Windsor Castle to get it.
Yeah.
But more than that, my mum met her twice.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, my mum met her twice. My mum did enormous amounts of work for charity.
Yeah, okay.
And during the Diamond Jubilee, my mum got an award, and she got one once before. A quick aside, which probably won't mean much to you. The first time my mum met the Queen, I said to my mum, what did you say? My grandmother lived till she was 106.
Wow.
Right. Now, when you turn 100, the Queen sends you a telegram or a card. So my grandmother got a card for 100, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They were married 70 odd years. Yeah. So she got a golden wedding anniversary card from the Queen, and you know, on and on and on. So when my mother met the Queen for what she'd done for charity, I said, what did you say to the Queen? And my mother said, thank you for sending my mother a card. Which is the way my mum was. She was adorable. But yeah, so she got up there twice to see the Queen.
Yeah, wow. That would have been an experience. And did you say anything to her when you met her? Or?
No.
Just...
It might not look like it, but I get very nervous. And in fact, I've always said I'll give away entertaining when I stop being nervous. Yeah. Because if I'm nervous, I give, you know, I practice. I might go out tomorrow to do a show that I've done for 147 years, but I'll practice it and I'll go through it in my head on the way there because I want it to be right, you know. Yeah.
And that's another thing that we always say with like people that come on here is the public speaking part of like getting up on a stage or even on live TV. Yeah. It would be threatening to me.
Very daunting.
And Eli's said that he wants to be a comedian.
Yeah, but
see, comedy's changed from when I started. Yeah. I used to tell jokes. Yeah. I still do tell jokes. But it's not that way anymore. Now it's situation comedy.
Yeah. It is a lot of that now. They tell stories.
Yeah. They're actually jokes that have been altered to make them sound like stories. Yeah. So it's all very different. And that's going to change. Yeah. I mean, that's going to change. I remember when comedy clubs started, you'd have people doing unbelievably rude things in the clubs, you know. But even that's changed. Even you go to a comedy club and there are wowzers now that, you mustn't do that.
Yeah.
And it's right. And believe me, you'll find it too. The older you get, the more you dislike the bad language.
Yeah.
Even though when I arrived, both of you went through about 20 expletives each. No, they didn't. They didn't. But you know, you get tired of it. You get to an age where you think, I don't want any problems.
Yeah.
It's like I went to watch Wales play England in the World Rugby Union Cup here in Brisbane.
Yeah.
There was no trouble. You know, it was just fine. One lady, and I won't mention her nationality, but she was Australian. She got drunk and wanted to pick a fight with a policeman. I mean, it was Wales against England, this you know, really big thing, but everybody got on like a house on fire. Nobody wants problems.
I thought at the Wales soccer matches they get a bit rowdy.
Yeah, I thought that they weren't allowed drinks or something. That's
Oh, no. I went, when I was home at Christmas, Wales played, at February, Wales played England.
Yeah.
So I went to the game. This side of me was a lady from Pembrokeshire, where I'm from, and she'd had a lot of drink. She sat there with, you know, you get takeaway.
Yeah.
She had 4 pints of beer.
Oh, no.
Right, 4 pints of beer. She was blotto before the game started. She'd keep, she'd fall asleep on me. Right? And then she'd wake up. She'd say, did we win? I said, we haven't started yet. Oh. And then the only time she disappeared, she went to buy 4 more pints of beer. She got lost coming back. But she eventually fell asleep again. She didn't say anything again. This side of me, there's always one person at a rugby game who shouts louder than anybody else, who sings, who hates the referee, calls him every name under the sun. He sat there. So I've got this drunken lady asleep here and this fella shouting and stuff. But it's all good, happy. You know, there's nothing bad. No, there were no fights. There was no nothing. The only problem was, because rugby union is so big in Wales, you queue for hours to get back on trains and all that sort of stuff, you know. And they try and segment it, so if you're going south, you go there, north there.
Same with Suncorp here. It's hell to get out of there.
Fabulous stadium, Suncorp.
Oh,
we are so lucky to have that stadium.
It's just painful to get out on the train sometimes.
Yes,
It's just the transport letting us down. Sydney's transport is awesome.
Is it?
It is amazing. They have trams everywhere.
Double-decker trains.
You say trams, though. I remember when I went to Melbourne once. It's really funny to see a tram coming up on the left-hand side of the road with 2 lanes of cars, and he's going right.
Yeah.
You know, and you think, whoa, this is a bit of a worry. But they know what they're doing. That's all that matters.
I was going to say, is there anything that you want to promote? Your business or whatever you're doing?
If you see the ad for Boris's Breakfast Club on stage next year, come and see it. You might like it. You might not. It's. I do a lecture called The Magic of Laughter. So whatever you're going to do, just what you're doing here is great. Enjoy it. You know, who knows? You know, and you won't become a comedian. You'll be hosting 60 Minutes on.
You'll learn 60 Minutes. The next Tracy Grimshaw.
There's a bit of a likeness there. And what are you going to do?
I'm into my photography. I like creating things. I just love creating different things.
Why don't you create a crazy show? You know,
well, that's what.
You know, when the Goons started, they were just 3 guys that got into a pub and did silly stuff. You know, come up with a crazy show.
I think it's like what you said at the start of the podcast, doing something that you love so that you can do it to the best of your ability.
Well, we started this like 3 months ago?
Yeah,
3 months ago, and it's gotten a lot bigger than we thought it was. We've got over like 2 million views now.
You're kidding me?
It's a lot. It's a lot bigger.
That's why there was a big check in the mail. But keep doing it. Just keep doing it, because it's great. You never know. You might end up with a big studio and
hopefully
and production assistants to run around.
Well, we've got producers.
They didn't turn up.
Oh, really? What is it, Saturday morning? Saturday afternoon. Hey, listen, you better wind this up. You want to watch the football?
We'll wind it up. Well, thank you for...
My pleasure, anytime. We only got to question 4. There's another 143.
How long have we been going for? An hour, 18 minutes.
You're kidding.
Hour,
so what, you have to edit this down to 5 minutes?
No, full thing. We'll keep people watching.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I did it very quickly. I went when I had Wombat. I went to Melbourne to interview different people. One of them was a lovely, lovely man. He was a handicapped man, and he decided he didn't want just to be a handicapped man.
Yeah.
He went to the pound and he got 3 dogs out.
Yeah.
And he taught these 3 dogs tricks.
Yeah.
And he would travel around and do kids' birthday parties with his dogs, which is really special.
Yeah.
But when most of our interviews back then, 10 minutes was a long time. You know, it was 3.5 minutes or something. 35 minutes I talked to him for, because he was interesting.
Yeah.
And at the end of the interview, I said, look, there's kids watching. What would you want to tell them? And he said the biggest problem is that when children see handicapped people, they're sort of frightened of them.
Yeah.
And they don't get near to them and they go away from them. He said, yes, I'm handicapped, but I'm an ordinary person. Come and talk to me. You know, treat us like ordinary human beings, which is what they are. And we put the whole thing to air. Dina Brown, bless her heart, was the producer at the time, and we cut it up into 2 or 3 segments, and the whole thing went to air because he was a lovely, interesting man. You know?
Exactly. Well, this whole thing will go to air, except for me dropping the mouse.
Sorry. Grab yourself a sandwich and a pillow. Lovely to meet you too. Good luck in the future.
It was good.
Good luck.
Thank you. And goodbye, Boris.
Goodbye, Boris.
Go watch his show.
They're saying goodbye to somebody they've never heard of.
I've watched some clips online.
At least you wear his colours, black.
Yeah, I always wear black.
Yeah.
Could be Boris, eh? He couldn't do the voice.
Yeah.
He's Boris talk like that. I did it. Oh, see, we're going longer. I got booked by a lady to do a birthday party outside Brisbane, and the man was 50 years old. And she said, Boris was his hero. Will you come dressed as Boris? She said his other hero is John Wayne, which you've never heard of. He's a cowboy, right?
Yeah.
So some people came dressed as John Wayne, others came dressed as Boris. And when I got there, I'm dressed as Boris, right? Black tights, boots, the whole thing. I didn't know she'd forgotten to tell me he was blind. He couldn't see me anyway, right? And he said, who's here now? And I said, it's me, and it's all incredibly boring. What am I doing? God, he said, it's Boris. Because that's the way Boris spoke, And I did a quick magic trick. Oh, I won't tell you. Go on. No, next time. Next time. Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry, folks.
Part 2 coming. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Eric.
My pleasure.
Such a nice
My
guy.
pleasure. I love your house. It's $1 million house they've got.
He's going to be living in our basement now.
Yeah, just looking where I can put the suit. Can I hang the suit up a bit? Say goodbye.
Go the lines. See you guys.